Hello, it's John Heaton, and this evening I'm going to discuss the recent news, or I'm not sure if it is news, about the possible remaking of the Let It Be movie. So Paul McCartney was interviewed recently on Canadian radio, and he hinted that they were possibly going to remake a new version of it for the 50th anniversary coming up in a couple of years. This is just the latest instalment in this tedious saga which we've had to endure for the last 30 years, really. This film was released on VHS back in 1981, and we haven't seen any proper DVD release of it, no remaster, nothing. So the album's out there, available, but the accompanying film, which I think is an important historical document, is not officially available. So Paul, in his interview with this Canadian radio station, said, well, first of all, I'll tell you what he said, then I'll tell you my views. I think there may be a new version of it. That is kind of the latest gossip. The original movie was showing the Beatles split up, so it was a bit sad for me. There's about 56 hours of footage, and someone was talking the other day to me and said the overall feeling is very joyous and very uplifting. It's like a bunch of guys making music and enjoying it, you know? So I think there is some talk about making a new movie, re-editing it from the same period, from the same footage. We can make a new film out of it, so who knows, that is what may be happening in a year or two. Well, first of all, if someone's going to re-edit it, I can't see how anyone's going to agree what to leave out and what to put in, because this is the same problem they had back in 1970. The initial cut was an hour longer than the 80 minutes it finished up as, and featured a lot of footage of John and Yoko, which was cut because of Paul, George and Ringo wanting it to be cut. John was upset by that at the time. And recently, in 2008, both Paul and Ringo apparently blocked the release of it, saying the two were concerned about the effect on the band's global brand. If the public sees the darker side of the story, neither Paul or Ringo would feel comfortable publicising a film showing the Beatles getting on each other's nerves. There's all sorts of extra footage showing more squabbles, so it's questionable if the film will ever see a reissue during Paul and Ringo's lifetime. So, I don't know, I've read from various sources that the Harrison estate, Olivia, is blocking it, that the Lennon estate, Yoko, is blocking it, that Paul and Ringo are blocking it. Paul is always saying, I'm not sure why it's not released whenever he's interviewed, and saying, yeah, we should do that. The objection should be me. I don't come off well. But, you know, I think behind the scenes, Paul's probably not pushing it. This is what slightly perplexes me. He uses a remark like, that's kind of the latest gossip, as if it's like open to chance and he's got no influence over whether it's released or not. I mean, this is an Apple film, and if I remember rightly, Apple films are owned by the four Beatles or their estates, so they must be the ones controlling whether it's released or not. I heard a rumour the other year that it was owned by some Russian company. I'm not sure how that would be possible. But anyway, so before I put the case for releasing it, just a bit of background here. So this film was recorded just 2 months after the White Album had been released, still sailing high in the charts at the time. It's a piece of history. It's the only studio footage of them making music together. It's fascinating for all kinds of reasons, such as they rehearsed tracks like All Things Must Pass, didn't make the cut. John and Paul were not keen on that particular song, which became a solo classic for George. The rooftop concert is legendary, the last Beatles performance, and is easily the best part of the movie. And, you know, John Lennon in 1970 said Paul McCartney kept the Beatles together for his own sake. But I would question that and say, actually, maybe he did it for his own sake, but he also did it for our sake, the fans' sake, because if he hadn't kept the band together in the last couple of years, we wouldn't have had the rooftop concert, we wouldn't have had Let It Be, and we wouldn't have had Abbey Road. So the whole history of the Beatles would have been very different. So the question is whether you want to show Acrimony or not in the film. I find it hard to believe that the overall feeling, if you watch 56 hours of footage, the overall feeling would be happy and joyous. I find that hard to believe. I think you could be selective and pick the happy moments, but then that wouldn't give a true picture. I think the fans want to see, if not all of the 56 hours, that would be interesting. They want to see, the original movie and then a couple of bonus discs with some, 4 or 5 hours of additional footage. We've seen the glimpses of that on Anthology, with clips of, if I remember rightly, them discussing the song Get Back, introducing Billy Preston to the rest of the band, and then extra footage on the roof, tantalising snatch of that on the 8 Days a Week film. So that whole rooftop concert was filmed on the roof, not just interspersed with stuff from the street below, so they could just show that unedited as an extra. The videos, the perfectly acceptable videos for tracks like Two of Us, For You Blue, still no official release of those. We were at least fortunate to receive the Let It Be and Long and Winding Road videos and Get Back, a sort of amalgamation of a Get Back performance on the recent Beatles 1 DVD, so we have that. Neil Aspinall commented in 2007 that a lot of the stuff is still controversial and that's why it's not released, and maybe that's the case. If people want to protect, or they don't want to remember the bad times, or George Harrison, obviously there was a bit of a miserable time for him as he was looking to break away, and Paul said he doesn't come across well, and Ringo doesn't want to show the Beatles squabbling, and probably John, if he was alive, would have the same feeling that it was, as he said in 1970, that it was a film controlled and made by Paul for Paul. But I think the views of the individual Beatles have to be put to one side, and the interests of the fans has to be put first. When you're making a documentary about Henry VIII, for example, you're not going to leave out the execution of Anne Boleyn or Catherine Howard just because it's unsavoury. In the same way as if you're showing a documentary of the Beatles making Let It Be, you should show it warts and all. And that was a good thing about Let It Be. It did show them, like no other album, as nature intended, or as close to it as we could hope for. So the possibilities are endless with this film, reissuing it in with all kinds of extras. I was going to wait until it came out before reviewing it, but quite frankly we'll all be dead and gone before it comes out, in all likelihood, the way things are going. So this latest interview from Paul is mildly encouraging, but I'm not holding my breath, I'm afraid. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time.